Hi, everyone. I am Larry Platt, the co-founder of the Philadelphia Citizen. This is Roxanne Patel Shepalavi, the brains behind the Philadelphia Citizen, executive director, executive editor, and resident genius. And that's our hype video to get you excited about our mission. For those of you who are new to the Philadelphia Citizen, we are a nonprofit media organization that is dedicated to defibrillating democracy in the American city where it was born. Yeah, get those paddles out, right? We just had a recent election, right? In the cradle of American liberty, in which 19% of our fellow citizens voted. And our mission, all of our mission, as that video attests, is to reclaim the government for the people. I know I sound like a radical, but there were radicals. Some of them wrote this document at 7th and Market wearing powdered wigs. So our whole mission is to get people excited about getting involved, getting civically engaged in their city. And that's why we do this series, Real Estate Development for Good. It's an exploration into the power of real estate development to realize progressive ends. You know, there's this whole movement, I've written about it a lot, if you've looked at the Citizen, about that they're calling like supply side progressivism out of the California housing wars, or outcomes progressivism, and it's about especially when you talk about housing, but not just housing. It's about providing goods and services so that people can afford them. That is the challenge of the day. And we have a supply problem. And here in Philly, we also have an income problem. So the question of all of these discussions is, what role can smart, targeted public and private development play in lifting all of us up? And that's why we're so excited for tonight's discussion.
So first of all, are you now all picturing Larry in a powdered wig? Because it would fit really nicely on his head. I just want to take a second to thank some of our sponsors and the people that we do this series with. So the Bellwether District and HRP Project, Brandywine Realty Trust, Campus Apartments, Clark & Cohen, Darko Capital, First Trust Bank, and our partners, Drexel University, Lindy Institute for Urban Innovation, who are in the room, I think. And give it up for the Fitler Club and all the people who have gone into setting up this room and serving us food, which would be great. Thank you. Larry's going to tell you about some upcoming events.
So yeah, this is just the shameless plug part of the evening. In next month, some of you might remember before the pandemic, there was an annual event here called the Rad Girl Awards, honoring women, both young and not young, who are changing Philadelphia, changing the leadership structure of Philadelphia. Basically, kick-ass women in 17 categories. We're bringing that back in partnership with Leah Kaufman, the founder of it, and that's a great event that's going to be on July 17th, and you can vote, right, you can nominate people to be considered to win Rad Girl of the Year, and then Rad Girl in all these different categories. In August, we'll host New Yorker reporter Eliza Griswold, author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning Amity and Prosperity, to talk about her terrific new book, Circle of Hope, which is an intimate account of the search for meaning in these fractured times from inside one Philadelphia church. She's also, if you're a subscriber to The New Yorker, has been the best reporter in America on Pennsylvania politics. Her stuff on Doug Mastriano was exemplary in 2022. So we'll also hear from her about whether our Commonwealth will be rescuing or shedding democracy in a few months. The other thing I'll say is that a call for membership, like we want to facilitate an army of citizens that takes back its government from the 200 or 300 people that have always run Philadelphia. So join the army. Right now we're a small but mighty militia, and we want to really ramp up our ordnance level. And finally, along those lines, if you didn't get it, take one of these vote cards. It's the ultimate voting toolkit. You can use the QR code to get all the info. Now, everyone in this room is probably a super citizen, right? But take this and distribute to people who are not as engaged as you, because together we've got to raise that 19%. It'll be higher in the presidential general election, but Philadelphia is still lagging behind, for instance, Pittsburgh in turnout, which could spell trouble in 2024.
So we have these cards, they're in the front, and my intention is really for everybody to take them and share them with family members, neighbors, your children, anybody who needs information about how to register, how to vote, where to vote, and who's on the ballot. You can get all of that stuff in one place. Now to our panel. I'm really excited to have all of these women on stage. I'm going to let our moderator introduce the panelists, but let me tell you who that is. Christina Johnston Zimmerman is an urban anthropologist and an adjunct professor at Drexel University. She is the founder and director of Think Urban, and she was named to the BBC 100 Women 2019 for her work advocating for women-friendly cities. She is exactly the person I thought of when we were organizing this panel. I will kick it to her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Also, just so everybody in the audience knows, we can barely see you. So later, so when we have questions or what have you, we'll figure that out as we go. But it looks like a full room, and you all look beautiful. So thank you so much for being here today. So I am actually on stage with the people that I think about when I think about this issue. I'm really inspired by the women sitting on the stage today, and I'm actually going to have them introduce themselves because they will do a better job of that than I will. But also, I want to say one quick note, which is I think that this stage is full of radicals, as we just heard. So we're going to kind of push a limit today. It's not just about equity. It's not just about representation, it's not just about numbers, it's not just about, these four people. It's about all of you, it's about the city, it's about the future, and yeah, we're here for it and up for the challenge. So I'll start with my left. We'll go down the line, and I want to hear your introductions about who you are, what you do, and how you got to now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm Melissa Schrock. I live in Boston, but don't hold that against me. This is also Eagles Green.
This is a safe space, by the way. I forgot to say that.
But we won. But I spend a lot of time in Philly, and why do I do that? Because I work at the Bellwether District. I'm the executive vice president of mixed-use development at the HRP Group, which is a mouthful. But what that basically means is I run the branch of our in-house development team that does everything that is not light industrial product. So we do housing, life science, lab, research and development, retail, hotel, all of those different kinds of uses across the country. But lucky for me right now, we only have 3 sites that fall into my bucket, which are Boston, Philadelphia, and outside of DC and Alexandria, Virginia. How I got here was a long and meandering path that I won't bore you with, but my background is in architecture. I went to undergraduate school, got my degree in architecture, practiced for many years in California, got my license out there, and through a winding and meandering path, came to realize that what I really cared about were cities and how cities functioned, and taking the skills that I had, the design skills and the design thinking that I had, and figuring out how to make cities better. In my development career, which has really been the last 12 or 13 years of my professional career, I've gotten to work on progressively larger and larger sites, to the Bellwether district, which is the largest site that I've ever worked on, which is 1,300 acres, and it is true city building, and that's what I love to do every day.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Great. Hi, my name is Lindsay Scannapieco, and I am the managing partner of Scout. We are an urban design and development practice, and our largest project to date here in Philadelphia has been the Bok Building in South Philadelphia. How many people have been there before? Oh, good. All right, great. Wonderful. So you know a little bit about it. And how I got here, also a winding path, so I very much appreciate that. I studied city design and social science and was really focused on public realm and kind of creative reuse and adaptive reuse, and through that found that I think we oftentimes think about the public sector as being the driver of community good and community-centered projects and projects that do more meaningful community engagement. We think about the private sector as not doing that. And I actually think there's a lot of gray space in the middle, and we were working on a project with a public sector. At that point, we were kind of primarily doing consulting work. Scout's about to celebrate 10 years and being in Philadelphia this fall. And we were consulting on what to do with a building, and politics changed. That project didn't happen. Somebody from the community said, why don't you just do it? And so it was really about how can we allow meaningful things to happen in our community spaces, because I think when we think about what shapes our cities, development is one of the things that shapes them more than anything else. And so how can we allow that to be a part of a positive story and about a more collaborative story, I think, with our communities. And so, but took me a long time to get here, and certainly wasn't where I thought I would be. And so I think just have appreciated the journey and feel very lucky to be here on stage with everyone. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. Monica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Miraglilo. So grateful for being here amongst these wonderful women. So my journey is a little different. I started on, I would say, in East Falls section of Philadelphia when I bought my first home. And I was told not to buy it. And I am the type of person, if someone tells me not to do something, I'm going to do it. And I bought this house, and it was a money pit, but I had a vision, and I knew that I can make it become a reality and a home for myself and my daughter. I was a single parent, and at the time, my boyfriend who's now my husband, he threatened me and said, if you buy that house, we're gonna break up. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. And so I bought the house, and every single day I went back and forth to Home Depot, and I asked guys to teach me how to do certain things. And gradually I would bring them home, something you wouldn't do anymore, right? And I learned everything from like laying tile, knocking down walls, hanging cabinetry, and I was basically self-taught. And I started to use my home as a platform for what people in my neighborhood who came and they wanted to know who this young girl was in this area who bought this house. And when they came in, they were pretty much blown away by just the aesthetics and the things that I had done. And so then I started to market myself as I'm your handy girl, and I started putting it in the neighborhood, and I started getting people who hired me. And I thought to myself, wait, these people really believe that I can do this. And I started to work next to different clients and grow my business. Eventually, I opened up a store in the Haverford section of Pennsylvania called Fill a Pillow. And it was like a Build-A-Bear, but with pillows. And women and children could come in, pick out fabric and trim, very high end, and get a custom pillow made the same day. And this started to be a snowball effect. And then at the end, I met my mentor, because I decided that In everything that you do in life, you need a team, and I didn't have a team. I thought that I could just overcome any obstacle in my way and then I could just make it, right? That was the biggest mistake I made, and so I had to close my business like 7 years later, and I met my mentor, Tony Rufo, who's a huge developer in the city of Philadelphia and surrounding areas, and he basically groomed me, and he told me that everything that you do, you have to start from the ground up. Build a foundation, and from that point on, you will be able to lay your head down at night and know that you're giving your client a great product, not a good product. So I took that in my life and my approach in developing. And my husband didn't like the fact that I was working with these men. And he's like, well, why don't we do it together? So that was hard. And eventually we started to work together, and every single day was a challenge, but I knew that I was going to overcome it. And we finally came to an agreement that he has to stay in his lane and I stay in mine. And then we were able to work together, because if we did not, we would not be here together. And today is my 19th anniversary. So I would just say all this was the foundation for me to start GirlBuild. And GirlBuild is a platform that I wanted to have to give women the resources so that they were able to be equipped and have the knowledge and the confidence to work in this space, because we are only 15% in the construction industry. But I want women to feel confident. I want them to know that we are just as badasses as the men that we work with, and not to be a victim, but to be a victor. So that's my story. I'll go on and elaborate later, but that's where I am. So I started GirlBuild, and I'm happy that today we are working alongside so many beautiful women and giving them the resources that they need.
Boyfriends be damned. Making that house happen. Thank you.
Good evening. Well, that's hard to follow and very inspiring. My name is Andreina Perez Hein, and I'm the executive director of Everybody Builds. Everybody Builds is a nonprofit organization, relatively new, last year and a half here in Philadelphia, and we are dedicated to eliminating the disparities in the construction industry and specifically increasing access to union career opportunities, as well as entrepreneurship and business growth opportunities for businesses that have historically not had access and have been underrepresented in our industry. So how I got here into this organization, I did start from the ground up in the construction industry, but before that, actually I'm a first-generation Latina immigrant. My parents brought me to this country with my sister when I was 5 for our opportunity for us. And so, you know, I learned a lot through seeing their struggles, being manual workers, and I was inspired and really felt the obligation to make the most of it and be successful. And, you know, after going to school, I started a career nonprofit and really started doing mission-driven work, working with Latino families in North Carolina and some of the poorest counties. Was more research-focused, had a degree in early childhood, and through opportunity, through networking, I was connected to a construction company and was able to kind of make a leap into the industry. And I'll save some of the great stories I have for later, but I made my way kind of north from Miami to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and then to Philly. And I really came here because I was looking for an urban city where I could kind of get everything that I wanted, the lifestyle, the city life. And I shopped for cities across the country, and I chose Philly. I was already in the construction industry at that point. I started in the field as a project engineer, working on, you know, with small teams and working with diverse contractors and supporting them as I was learning, having no background at all in construction, and finding that there was a way to make an impact in this industry and that I could kind of carry the passion that I had into it. And so I feel like my road was convergence, where after then getting involved in nonprofit work here in Philadelphia, finding the Latino community, finding a way to make an impact here, I ended up getting kind of, you know, connected to this organization as the first executive director and being fortunate enough to be able to work in an industry that I know, that I've had 15 years of experience in, to make an impact here and help this industry here in Philadelphia and help everybody have much more access to opportunity. And I am a Philly resident. I live still to this day since I got here in Center City. I can walk home on the Schuylkill River Trail. And I have 2 girls that are 6 and 7, so I try to expose them to everything that there is in this industry so that they can find their way.
Thank you, everyone. I really love that because each of you have a different path. The paths were obviously very convoluted as they went along, but you all have your own motivation and work, quite frankly, in quite different ways, right? So we have private development, nonprofit, advocacy, et cetera, small scale, large scale. So I'm interested in, I guess, sort of the moment right now we're in for each of you on the stage is that you've done it. Yeah, more or less. I mean, we're in the middle of the journey. Do not smirks, Lindsay. We're in the middle of the journey like all of us, but you've really accomplished a lot. I'm curious about if there was a project or if there's something that you can talk about that really exemplifies the challenges that you faced, or maybe an obstacle that you overcame, and how it presented as an opportunity for you in the past.
I would say my opportunity to work on the paintbrush factory here in Philadelphia on, I believe, Jefferson. I work with Tony Ruffo on that project. It was 151 units, and I basically helped develop the entire, from the beginning to the end. And it was a little challenging because I was working along a lot of different architects and engineers and subs that have never worked with me before, and I don't really have a name, right? People know of me, they know me, but they just were not really, I believe, giving me the respect that I thought I deserved in this space. But I didn't allow that to define who I was, and I was gonna allow them to make me feel less than, because I knew I was qualified, because Tony knew I was qualified. So I felt confident with that. But what that allowed me to do was to work on other bigger projects and to grow alongside and just learn the business on a level bigger than where I was. Because my husband and I, we probably developed over 100 plus properties and rehabs in Philadelphia, but working with Tony, it was just on a different level. So I also worked on the Hawthorne building with him. And that, I believe, was about 50 plus units. So I was able to just really get down and work alongside and to learn that, never walk in a space with an attitude or woe is me. Always walk in with a positive attitude, because when you have that block and people see that, they can feel and sense the energy, then you will never grow. You want to make sure that you let people know that, yes, I'm here to stay and I could do it and there's nothing you could do about it. So I always had that great energy, and I wanted to make sure that they knew it. And then they grew to love me, and we are here. Now I'm here. So that's it. That's what I say. I would say that's my one of the things that I would say was helped me along the way in my career.
That's great. Thank you.
I think, when we first started Bok, so many people told us that it wouldn't work. I remember that so clearly. And I think to some extent, you don't know what you don't know. I think, I don't think I understood how big of an undertaking it was. And actually, that's one of the best things that you can sometimes do. And I think when we were starting out, people were saying well, where's the precedence? Where's the examples? Where does this exist in the city? How do you know there's going to be this demand? And for better or for worse, we started with the bar, which is the most public piece of the building. But we kept saying to people, but it's going to be a lot more than a bar. And that took so many years to build. And I think for me, one of the biggest learnings, opportunities, and challenges is actually time. Because I actually think by taking a long time to actually build the project, it allowed us to gain community trust along the way, to learn ourselves about what did and didn't work or problems that we hadn't foreseen. So when we had 10 tenants and they said, we actually really need a bigger mailroom period. Like you're able to kind of see these pieces that actually make a huge impact in how somebody's able to work in their space. And today, Bok is 340,000 square feet. We see over 250,000 visitors a year. Over 600 people call the building their work home. 52% of the businesses in the building are owned by females. And so a really important community work center. And I think for us, the opportunity was really in seeing that, if you build it, they will come in some ways, but also the importance of just dirty, affordable workspace for so many people in our city. I think when we talk about how do we support nonprofits, how do we support community organizers, how do we support artists, how do we support entrepreneurs? Well, we do that all not through really sexy, finished office space, but through actually affordable office space where somebody can enter a lease that they're not going to have to live and die on, but that they can be flexible and nimble and grow and change, and they can change their business and they can grow their business and take on a bigger space or decide to change what they're doing in that space. And so for us, I think the biggest learning was really just to allow the building to be a framework for people to do what they wanted to do, a space for people to experiment, a space for people to try things, and how important it was to build a team that allows that. Like, I think, we're all on this stage, but I think we all know that none of our work would be possible without a great team. And I think that is just so, so, so important from the beginning, is to build people who share that vision and that care and enthusiasm and just like love for the building. It will kind of permeate through, I think, all of the work. So
I'll stay on that theme about you don't know what you don't know, and I think that can be a challenge, but it can also be a huge asset. And I think at many points throughout my career and to getting here, that was exactly the case. Entering the construction industry, having no experience, I didn't know any better. I had blinders on. I was young. I didn't see myself as a Latina female who would kind of stick out as a sore thumb. I sat across the table from somebody on an interviewing committee at the construction company that looked at my resume, saw no relevant experience, and said to me, "No offense, but why are you here?" And by the end of the conversation, I had won him over. And he said, "Okay, I get it." So at different points along the way, having been running construction projects, transitioning to being a project manager, running teams of subcontractors, and not seeing myself in that way allowed me to be able to be successful, to gain their respect, right? To be successful on projects, to work with owners and clients. And I would say the same has held true in coming to this position and starting this organization. It's been beneficial. While I, have been here now in Philadelphia for 11 years, I've worked for a union construction company, and I learned kind of, union construction and what that means. Because in North Carolina, where I started my career, there was no union construction. By the same token, I have been open-minded enough and haven't known enough to be able to say, you know what, if this is ever going to happen and we're ever going to increase access, the time's now. And so I don't come to the table with an idea of, this has been tried before, it doesn't work, you'll never get them to, change their mind. I approach things with an open mind. It's been a year and a half, we're here. We have, a large number of stakeholders behind us, developers, contractors, subcontractors, and we've helped individuals get into construction careers. We've helped them get reemployed and have worked with the unions directly to do that. So that idea of kind of not seeing those challenges and those obstacles and not being jaded by what others may see and know allows you to look at things differently and approach them in a different way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would just add to that, because I think a lot of what these ladies have said resonates with me, and I think sometimes not knowing what you're supposed to know is actually an advantage. And it's one of the things that I talk to my team about as it relates to real estate development, commercial real estate development, which is what we do. It's hard. It takes years. It's a slog. No one helps you. you have to be an optimist. You can't actually do the work if you aren't optimistic that it will happen one day and that you believe in the vision and you're constantly selling the vision, whether that's to investment partners or tenants or cities and state agencies, people that you're working with, community members, you know, you're trying to explain to them, no, I know it doesn't look like that today, but someday it's gonna look like this. Someday it's gonna create all these jobs. Someday we're gonna have this open space. Someday we're gonna have all of those things. But from here to there is nothing but hard work. And you had asked, your original question was, can you think of a project or something that, you know, a project experience that is relevant? One of the things that I thought back to when you asked that question was an experience I had several years ago at a different employer when I was at a different stage in my career. I was a senior project manager, and I was running the development of a 440-unit apartment building, and I was also doing all of the entitlement work for another development that still is not built, that was like 1.5 million square feet on top of a train station in Boston. So I had a lot on my plate, but an opportunity came along in that context for a build-to-suit for, it ended up, originally it was supposed to be for Biogen, it ended up being for Google, but it was a build-to-suit in Kendall Square, and the people above me didn't want it. They were like, oh, we have too much to do, we don't really want another, and I said, I will do it. I will do it. And my boss said, are you sure? Are you sure? Because you already have this other stuff that you're doing. I was like, I want to do it. And I got the project, and I ran it, and that got built, and it's there today. And I think, you know, me putting my hand up at that moment actually demonstrated to people what I was capable of and what my capacity was. And I think that changes like people's perceptions.
Wow, okay, so I feel really optimistic now. Also, I'm glad I don't have your job, so I'm not gonna lie. But I am hearing a lot of different things, and I'm sort of a researcher. I love synthesizing this. But over the years, I've asked people the question around women in cities and what makes them different. You know, like what is it about like the product or like the approach or the people behind it? And I think everybody has their own answer. There's a lot of different answers that are really fantastic. I would like to ask you about what you think makes that different, because in your approach, I'm hearing just so much optimism, so much, you know, attitude, you know, towards getting it done, like not stopping. Like, I mean, it's just so motivational. But what is it about like your approach, or do you think about women's approach that really makes this different than other 4 people that would be sitting on this stage, right? Hard question, I know, I'm sorry.
I can start on this one. I look for alignment of interests because when you're trying to get any project done, but especially like really big projects done, there are impacts to people and areas around you. And part of the reality of development is that there's value creation when you build a new project. And part of what we do in development is figure out how we can, we're there, if you're like me and we're, you know, a for-profit company, you're trying to figure out how we can capture that value. But you're also trying to figure out how you can share that value in a way that works for those around you. You know, people in the community, things that the city needs, things that, infrastructure improvements that might need to be made. How do we make this project work not only for us and the users of this eventual, whatever it's gonna be, right? Housing project or commercial project or whatever. But how do we also create value in the community that we can then share? And I think looking for alignment of interests, and this I think holds whether you're talking about like the public entitlement process or whether you're talking about investors or tenants, or you're always looking for alignment. Where is it that I need to go, but that also is where you need to go? And I think women are especially adept at that. I also just personally think we're far more organized.
That was not one of the things I was going to say, actually, that we're more organized. Okay, but thinking about the broader picture, basically, and thinking about sharing the wealth, almost literally.
Hello? Something that we talk a lot about on our team is how do you communicate care? Because there's ways to communicate. So I'm just going to use an example of like somebody's air conditioning breaks. Maybe a good thing to talk about on a hot day. And you want to fix it, but maybe you can't. You're not going to install a brand new, top of the line, whatever, really expensive split system. You are going to replace the window air conditioner and you're going to bring in a fan today. But how do you communicate that with care? Because sometimes you can't kind of throw money at all the problems. That's just the reality that you have to deal with. But there's a way to say, like, I can't solve that today, but I brought a fan because I want to make sure you stay cool today, or can you come and work in this other space, or I brought you an iced coffee. Like, it's actually just sometimes just those little gestures, and we're constantly talking about as a team about when you can't totally solve a problem, how can you still show that you care? And I would say that I think that is more of a woman trait than as a whole. I think the other piece is meeting people where they're at. I think especially in development, we have some really formal kind of quote processes. I think I'm just going to use zoning as an example. We have 7 p.m. zoning meetings on a Wednesday night, and that's how we get community buy-in. We all know that the type of person who comes to a Wednesday 7 p.m. meeting is a very specific person in our neighborhood and is not at all reflective of the overall community. And so the question of like, how do you meet people where they're at? So in the early years of Bok, we would just hand out cups of coffee on the corner. We'd talk to people and say, you want to know what's going on here? And some people would say, no, my kid doesn't go to school there. And I'd say, I know, actually, it's not a school anymore, but we can still talk about what's going to happen in it in the future or what you'd like to see happen in it. And the first year we kept an office in the workshop space, which is now home to a great coffee shop and a bike repair shop and a cafe and an amazing bakery called Machine Shop Boulangerie. And we had our office there, and we just put a sign outside that said, like, if you have questions, come in and talk to us. And people did. Like, we're in South Philly. People really came in and talked to us. And so for better or for worse, like, most of the neighbors now have my personal cell phone number. They use it. But I think, again, it's also just like meeting people where they're at. And what they realize is that we were humans trying to do something with a big old building, and that there was a good intention there. And I think that I can't think of many other male developers that I've interacted with who feel that way. I also think there's just a way that we, for better or for worse, the way that we talk about our work, we're not always, I think, and maybe like in that comment when I kind of like shied away, sometimes we're not as bombastic about our work. Like I remember when we were starting, somebody said, well, you've got to make this pitch that you are creating the most interesting project in Philadelphia. And I was like, I don't know if that's true. Like, we're gonna try. Like, I can say, like, we're trying to create an interesting project. And they were like, no, you've got to say that. And I think for better and worse, and I think that is a real, like, for better and for worse, I think we are more maybe mindful of things that might be, I'm just gonna say like an exaggeration or, and I think that there is that kind of human connection there that I think just women are more attuned to.
Yeah, I'll follow that and add to Lindsay. Those are some of the things that I definitely had thought of, kind of that human-centered approach, that kind of holistic approach. I think as a society, maybe we've come further, but it's something that we tend to bring to the table because many of us are caretakers of children or parents or, others who depend on us and kind of fill that role. So we approach others in terms of, being caretakers. I think, one thing I think about is the fact that just coming to the table as a woman when you don't have those blinders on anymore makes you a little more focused on gaining respect, working hard, showing others that you're knowledgeable and ensuring that you're prepared. And I venture to say that, we approach our work in that way and our work in the industry in that way as well. And so I think that, we bring a little something different to it at the end of the day.
Hello? Yeah, I will say we do. We definitely do. Women, I always say when I'm talking to women, we are the backbone of building everything. We build families, relationships. We build strong men to go out to provide for our families. We are nurturers. We're planners. And so on a site, you have to have a plan and so you can execute your build. And I feel as though that women might definitely take it to the next level and make sure that every detail is done accordingly. We're very particular, and I feel as though that we are nurturing, right? I work on a lot of sites, like I said, with men, and sometimes, you have to cater to these men. I'm like, oh my God, like, grow up and be a man. Like, what are you doing, dude? And so, like, it's just exhausting. And so, but it really, no, it is. I mean, it's almost like being married to your spouse, and it's constant, constant. And so I've learned to just, try to always make them realize that, listen, you don't work for me, you work with me. And that goes a long way with people when they know that they have a purpose or that they have invested interest in your business or that you make them feel like they're more than just a worker. So I feel like a lot of times us as women, we definitely are the ones that can bring our families and bring everything together so that it works accordingly in rhythm. We wear a lot of hats. We do everything. Seriously, like we really do. We can multitask like no other. And I'm just going back to my husband, like he'll say, you can't do that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I am going to do X, Y, Z and come home and cook dinner for you and whatever else. So at the end of the day, it's like we are just unstoppable. And I think that a lot of us have a lot of good traits that can really cultivate relationships to grow bigger and better. So I will say that, in a lot of ways that we are just the best. Yeah.
Yep, that about sums it up. Okay, but that's also exhausting. Like, let's be honest, right? I mean, like, we've all had burnout. And also, I think it's important. I mean, we're all dealing with something, right? Everybody that you meet is dealing with something all the time. So, how do you do it? Like, that's literally my question. What keeps you motivated? Like, what keeps you going? Like, what do you do when you're having a bad time, when you lose a project, like when you literally drop something or can't, coordinate your team? Like, how do you go on? Inquiring minds want to know.
Well, I'll say it takes a village, for sure. And having those supports when you're having those bad days, to talk to another woman in the industry that you know, that can listen to you, can help to motivate you and remind you why you're here and what you're doing and the difference that you're making. I think that plays a huge role. I know for me, I've had mentors along the way that I didn't realize were mentors, and people who've become mentors to me right now that I can turn to. And some of them are people that I'm supporting. And others, in a way they're supporting me as well, and they don't realize that. But I think also, having that kind of long-term vision, and on days where I'm feeling like this is impossible, then kind of thinking about, well, what could it be? And if I stepped away from this, how would I feel about that? What's the alternative? The grass isn't always greener. And so, I look at my girls, and the village part comes in where, I recognize I need help. My husband only does so much. I need, help with somebody that can pick them up. I need help with somebody that can help me at home so that I can actually spend more time with them, so that I can feel like, I have the opportunity to do work that's meaningful to me and impactful for me in the industry. And so it kind of takes really focusing on creating that village for yourself and having those people out there that can keep encouraging you, especially when you have those bad moments. And you lose something, or others try to step in and take credit, for creating things or doing work that you've been doing quietly, right? That has real impact and meaning behind it.
I mean, I think you're 100% right in touching on the need to surround yourself and acknowledge where you need support, because we are not doing this all on our own. I think that's right. Like, we have amazing teams behind us, and I think that's really critical and important. I think for me, when I'm having a tough day and kind of saying, like, why are we doing this? Like, I always just take a walk around the building, because there's so many people doing just so many different things. We've got everything from, glass blowers to tattoo artists to architects to textile designers, jewelry designers, ceramic artists, fabric recycling, somebody who prints sheet music, somebody who repairs violins, or pianos, I'm sorry. All different types of things happening in the building, and there's people that are just, they wouldn't have a place to do that work. And I just, like, it's just amazing when you talk to people and hear about actually what that space has provided for them. And I say, oh, all right, I've got to figure this out, because we can't kind of allow this to fall apart. And so I really, the community of people is certainly what inspires me. We had a block party on Saturday, and I woke up on Saturday not wanting to go. I was tired. I was like, I'm tired. Oh, this is going to be a drag. And I met this exceptional woman who was just, she'd been so inspired by the building, and she came over and told this whole story to our team and said that the whole team was off the chain, and she was just so excited to be there. She was almost in tears, and you're just like, oh, right, that's why I actually showed up on a Saturday in 90-degree weather and moved tables for many hours. And so I think that community of people is certainly what ignites me, or kind of reignites me in those challenging moments. And so I think having purpose in your work and having impact in your work is just, I think it's the most fulfilling thing that you can do.
I want to, compliment what you just said. So the whole purpose of me starting GirlBuild was to build a community of women that we could support in this industry. It's necessary, and it's just really great to have those resources and to be able to talk to other women who are in the same space. So the fact that you said it takes a village, it definitely does. It takes a village. It's great to have the support. It's great to be able to, build other women up. It's just really inspiring. It's empowering. That is the whole purpose of starting GirlBuild, to empower women, to let them know that we can build anything. We can build our lives, our dreams, our homes. It just takes one step forward to realize that you're in a space where there are other women, right? And so I wanted to have the platform to provide those resources, to equip women with the tools so that they're knowledgeable and they can have the confidence and independence, to have financial freedom, to be able to buy and to understand the true meaning of developing, because it's not just saying oh, I'm gonna buy this house and I'm gonna make it look pretty. No, there's so much that goes into rehabbing or developing. There is so many different variables, and a lot of people just don't know, and they lose a lot of money, a lot of time. So it's great to have that village. It's great to have that community to be able to understand, and it's great to have the resources so that you can make sure that you build the best, or develop the best build in your entire life.
I don't know that I can add that much to everything everyone has said. So I originally got into commercial real estate development in the whatever, 15 years ago, I decided to go back to graduate school after, so I was like mid-career, and as an architect. And the primary reason that I decided to do it at the time was because I looked around and I saw that the planet was dying. And I was like, well, what can I do to help? I'm just an architect. And, I'm not a scientist. Like, I can't solve global warming. I don't know how to capture carbon, all that kind of stuff. But I just, you look at the statistics and it's like, well, we need to stop sprawling, right, as a species. We need to densify, we need to concentrate, we need to live like more softly on the planet, right, more gently on the planet. And to do that, we need to incentivize people to want to live and work in cities. And to do that, they have to be livable. And so that was kind of like my big picture thing, was like why I went back to school and city planning and real estate development was I wanted to find a way to make cities more livable so that we could, and I know this sounds kind of cheesy, but like as a species, like retract a bit and live like more gently on the planet and use our resources more wisely and hopefully, find a bunch of other ways to stop, creating more greenhouse gas and all that stuff. So that's kind of my original inspiration, and I do believe that, and I do think that's really important, and that does inspire me to like get up every day and do what I do, because these are long-range projects. These are not something that I do, today, and in 6 months it's done, and I move on. Like, they take years of effort to get done. Sometimes I wonder, like, am I having the good impact or not? Am I making, cities more livable? But now I have an opportunity to work on these sites that are literally like vestiges of, fossil fuel technologies that are really, thankfully, going the way of the dodo. And we're learning to, develop new technologies that are more sustainable. And I love the opportunity that I have to work on those sites. So that's one. But I would just say that the older I get, the more I'm faced kind of with my own finiteness. And so now I think a lot more about the people. Like, I still want to see those places built and those destinations for the people to inhabit and to work in, but I also think about the people who are around me. And now I have a team, and I think a lot about how can I help them get to the next stage of their development, and how can I maybe give them some clues and sit back and let them figure it out and let them do it. Because they're gonna be here when I'm gone, and they're gonna teach other people, when they're gone, or teach people when they'll be gone. But just to create a better trajectory, I guess, like a more longevity of that way of thinking. And so that inspires me.
Not cheesy at all. That's totally speaking my language. Also, I'm so glad you talked about death. I did. But we don't have time to get into that. Sorry, everyone. We do have time for one more question, I think, right, before we give it to audience. So this is my wrap-up question for you all. And again, you don't all have to necessarily answer, but please do, because I'm very interested in hearing what you think. But what gives you hope for the city of Philadelphia? What is your vision for the city? What do you think that we need to focus on? Where do you see things going? Or, again, if we need to interject something in some way, what would you have the city do to be more livable and equitable and better for women and girls and so on?
I know this is quick, but I've got 3 things that I feel really important. We have a huge amount of office vacancy. I don't think we've seen the most of that's coming down the line. I think we're at 30% right now. I don't think that's changing. I think we need to think about alternative reuses for how we work and the type of work that we do and how those buildings can be reused. The most sustainable building is the building that already exists. I would love to see more encouragement for adaptive reuse, and it doesn't just have to be housing. I think that's one thing I'd really love to see happen. The second is that we have a lot of vacant properties still in the city of Philadelphia, and we don't do enough to incentivize people to do something with them. We allow people to sit on properties while everybody else does the hard work around them until it makes sense for them to sell. I'd love to see types of policies that could be enacted that would really support and incentivize people taking action with their space. There's plenty of models for it. There's vacancy taxes in other cities that raise incrementally. And even if you do something like a meanwhile or a temporary use where you can be exempt from that. And so it really allows kind of an experimentation and a more creative reuse of our cities, which I think is just more interesting for all of us. I think we all need spaces to try things, to experiment, to see what works, to see what we all want to do. And so I would love to see our city push that forward. And I think the last is just to do with the loss that I think we've all experienced with the closure of University of the Arts and PAFA, and I think thinking about how are we supporting cultural producers in our city. It's great that we have exceptional institutions like the PMA, the ICA, Barnes, fantastic institutions. What are we doing to support cultural producers coming and staying in the city of Philadelphia? Because that is what makes us a more interesting city. And I believe we really need to protect that.
I'll take a kind of workforce perspective to it from the construction industry view. I'd say, you know, my ultimate vision is a construction industry here in Philadelphia that reflects the diversity of our city, and that you can look at a construction site and it really reflects the makeup of our city. And things that are happening here in Philly that are giving us national attention and focus and concerted efforts are making me more hopeful. Philadelphia has been named a national workforce hub, and with that brings national attention and resources and efforts to really get our, you know, city, state government focused on how do we truly make an impact in getting people into family-sustaining careers and jobs. And I'm seeing that in the construction industry. It's not only focused in our industry. You know, we came in, Everybody Builds was formed with a focus on the private sector because what we're trying to do is innovative. It's different. We're trying to approach, you know, the way that we carry out construction and work with businesses in a different way. We're trying to shorten the pay cycles. We're trying to do things that, you know, are untraditional. And so it's, you know, to put in a plug here, developers like HRP, who are actually one of the founders of Everybody Builds, who've come to our city with the intent, the focus, and the willingness to do things differently. And developers like Mosaic, for those of you who know Mosaic, who, you know, are one of our partners and are willing to stand up and say, okay, we're gonna try different things. We are going to be one of the ones that are willing to come to the table and try something different, innovative, and, you know, with the backup of this has been done before. Chicago has done this, and now I'm feeling, you know, very hopeful that we can make this happen on the public sector side as well. That we can work with our local government to implement, you know, the types of solutions that we're implementing and putting together for workforce and contractor businesses in the public sector as well, and make that more attainable.
I feel the least qualified to answer this question since I'm not from Philly, but I spend a lot of time here, so I'll give you my perspective as a somewhat outsider, because I'm here a lot. The COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, was incredibly destabilizing for the entire planet. It had a destabilizing effect in multiple ways, one of which is commercial real estate, which, you know, we're still spiraling about. Lindsay just spoke about the office you know, vacancy issue and the opportunity to make conversions with that real estate. But I think even like just broader than the real estate issue, there's an economic development opportunity, because in any crisis, there's opportunity. And what I see looking at Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is a lot of really highly motivated political will with Mayor Parker, with Governor Shapiro, to bring business and economic development to Pennsylvania, to Philadelphia. What I see is that we have here the meds and eds that other cities have as well. So you have the great institutions, right, that train people that companies come out of, and you have the workforce as well, so that if companies choose to locate here, they have the workforce that can help those companies grow and that can help the local community prosper from that. And so I think Philadelphia is particularly well poised in the next decade to really eat the lunch, frankly, of a lot of other American cities who maybe think like, oh, we're number one and we don't have to do anything to stay at that position. I think Philadelphia is really well poised to grow and go eat their lunch. Like, I'm here with you. Like, let's go eat their lunch.
Monica, last word.
Hello? Okay. I would just say, like, I believe that it would be great if we could have more trade schools here in Philadelphia that would allow young people to really get involved and have a trade. Like, you know, I think it's really important that they can have something to fall back on, because there's just not a lot of work. A lot of kids, they go to school, they spend a lot of money in these colleges, and they don't have a lot to fall back on. But if you have a trade, HVAC, electrician, anything that they can fall back on and then become independent enough to go out and feel confident to purchase properties or have some type of program that will allow young people to be invested into getting their own property. Because I feel as though, like I said, like once people are invested in something, then they take care of it, right? Our neighborhoods are not as great as they should be, but if people know that that's theirs, like, you know, you have a home, you want to make it the best home when you have invested the money and the time to make it your home. So I feel as though that if we had the programs implemented in the city of Philadelphia to have these trade schools come and into our communities and give people opportunities to be able to develop and rehab, because there's so many dilapidated buildings in the city of Philadelphia, but we can together bring them together and make it so that, you know, they have invested interest. So that's what I believe and my thought.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Are we getting audience questions as well? All right, first
yeah.
round of applause. Yeah.
What a great optimistic panel. I love that rallying cry. Let's go eat their lunch. I think that should be marketed.
There are going to be T-shirts on Broad and Snyder.
There you go.
Wait.
So let's do some questions. No, this isn't the U.S. Senate. No filibusters. Questions, and we'll start over here. I'll hold the mic. You speak. Say who you are.
I'm Michelle, and my question is, what can we do about all of this vacant office space while at the same time we're building more and more high-rises in Center City, which I don't think we need?
Bueller.
That's a hot topic.
I mean, I think that we do need to continue to grow as a city. I think we need to have reasons for people to want to move here, to want to stay here. I think that's really important. And so I think the balance of how do we continue to invest and improve in our city while also using what exists. And I don't exactly know the answer, but I would love to see more incentives about reusing buildings. Part of that right now is, I mean, there's a bill about increasing the historic tax credit, for example, in Pennsylvania, which I think could have an impact. And I'd love to kind of hear other people. I'm sure there's people in this room who have ideas about that. I'd love to hear them.
I want to just take off on what you're saying. Like, I agree. Like, I feel as though that we are changing the landscape in this city, and I personally do not like it. Philadelphia has a lot of charm. It has a lot of history. It's historical. I mean, we have the cobble streets. It's just beautiful. You go through Chestnut Hill. You go through Germantown. There's so many beautiful buildings, so why not just utilize what we have instead of changing the landscape? It's just overwhelming. It's starting to look, I mean, I want to be honest, I'm not in Philadelphia anymore. I live in Florida. The last year and a half I moved, and I came back and I was like, what happened? Like, I'm confused. But listen, I understand the development is necessary, But I agree with you. I think if we took some of the buildings, like you took the Bok Building, I mean, that's incredible. You utilized that space and you made it something great, right? So why can't we take a couple of the factories that we already have and just turn them into these amazing spaces? Because we have the charm and we have all of the history here. So I agree with that. You know, there's just so much that we can do. I just feel as though that we are starting to look very, I don't know, like it's just like one row after another, all these different buildings. And that's just my opinion. It's not, you know, an opinion that is, you know, going to make waves, but that's how I feel. Just saying.
We have let's hear from a dude over here. Say who you are.
Gee, thanks, Larry. I'm Bill. Monica first. Someone whose father and 8 siblings were raised at 3720 Calumet Street in East Falls. And I also was a resident there for a good part of my life. I can't believe you left East Falls for Florida. What is wrong with you? Lindsay,
Honest. I loved East Falls. For 22 years, I lived there.
Did you?
It was like the best place ever. I lived on Queen Lane, right around the corner from you, by the way. I moved there for opportunity. I moved there because I love warm weather. There's just a lot of different things going on there, and I had an opportunity to work on a couple of things. I'm here all the time. I'm working on projects in Manayunk. I love Philadelphia. I mean, what's not to love, right? No one can make the best like food. We have the best restaurants in America in Philadelphia. I just swear by it. But I'm here all the time. So my family is still here, but I had opportunity.
And did you have a follow-up for Lindsay?
yeah, I do. You're forgiven. If you're there for more than 10 years, you're official, so you can do whatever you want after that. Lindsay, I heard you describe Bok, and I think 52% are female of your. I also believe that over 70% are local residents. Am I right about that? So when I think of Bok, I think of what I call organic community development. And I think that's what's going to save this city. We need more of that in just about every segment of this town, especially where I am. And so that's a model, and it's a great model. And I'm just wondering, I mean, everybody always wants to go for the grand slam. The future of the city is in the neighborhoods. And if we don't address that, this city will never be a great city, in my opinion.
Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate that. I think, I think the question of how do we do this in more places, part of it comes down to just affordability, to be honest. I think like big, cheap buildings provide opportunities for people to do non-traditional things. Big, expensive buildings provide no flexibility to do anything but market rate housing. And that's just the economics of it. So, yeah.
There was someone right up here, I think. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, hi, my name's Pat Sanford, and from Alexander Perry Inc., and I know my buddy here from Everybody Builds. I can tell you that I had a lot of events today, one being with the mayor, but I wanted to be here, and I can tell you that I'm like so excited. This session here, Women Build It, is by far what's going to change the city of Philadelphia. I truly believe it. I was an art commissioner for 12 years. I've been in business for 31 years. I'm in construction. I'm in architecture. And I can tell you that each of your visions is really what's going to change it. I mean, I can talk about, I was with New Cumberland, is a developer that does mixed use. It's called inclusive development. So you take senior living, you take people that can pay $500,000 for an apartment, and you combine them, and what happens is there's statistics that then everybody's helping each other grow. And I think that's what's going to help us get out of poverty in Philadelphia. So thank you for what you're doing.
Just say thanks for that, Pat. Seeing you here in the front row is an inspiration, and hearing that as well, because I think of you as one of the people that is really making an impact in this industry and is committed to mentoring women and supporting others in the industry.
We'll do about like 10 more minutes, and then we'll get everyone home. Thank you all.
Hi, I actually had two questions, but Rochelle asked my first question, because both Art House and Center Square are kind of equally vacant, and we need to reuse our office space. But my question is, how are you thinking about green space? Because it is like 1,000,000 degrees outside today in Philadelphia. I live in South Philly. I'm thankful that I have 3 trees on my block. One of them is mine through Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. And I just wanted to know how you're incorporating trees and green into your thinking about projects.
Great question.
Not going to talk about my day job on this one. I think parks are so important. I think public parks are so important to our cities. Philadelphia has some of the best public parks in America, and we fund them less per capita than any other top 10 city in the U.S. I think that we need to do more to invest in our parks, but we have exceptional ones. I'm super involved in FDR Park, which is something I love dearly, and I would love to just see us to continue to support and keep our parks accessible for all. I think sometimes the best parks are parks that people feel ownership over it, whether that's whatever green space it is. I think that's really important when people feel like they own a piece of that city. But also just have those basic amenities. Like, I talk a ton about public toilets. I think they're like one of the most important and humanizing things that we can do in our cities. And so Bok, our toilet is publicly accessible. It was written up on a list of like top 10 best public toilets in the city, which then of course led to other problems. But I think generally it was like a good thing. We were like, we're gonna like deal with this problem because we actually want to be a part of it. And so, yeah, public space and public parks, I just think are so important to our cities. And I'm excited for new leadership in Commissioner Salson.
Yeah, let's do one right here. Say who you are.
Hi, my name is Nancy Stinson, and I'm a volunteer for a number of organizations, including Trinity Memorial Church at 22nd and Spruce. We happen to have a homeless shelter there that we have operated for almost 40 years, and we have about 20-some men who stay there every night. But we don't have the space to be able to accommodate women. And so when I saw that this was a panel of women talking about development for good, I wanted to ask whether this was something that might be on your radar screen, the idea of, I mean, there are some really intractable problems here in Philadelphia. One of them is the homelessness issue, and there are more facilities right now for men than for women. It's harder for a woman. It's hard for anybody to be homeless, but it's really hard for women. So I'm hoping this panel of wonderful women might have some ideas on what the next step might be.
Anyone ready to solve homelessness?
I can't solve that problem today, but I appreciate you raising it, and I would just say that that's a good call out. You know, the way the facilities are designated by gender, and that there aren't enough beds in Philadelphia for anyone, but especially for women. I think this is a problem across many cities in the United States today. It's not unique to Philadelphia. We have a significant unhoused problem. I think one of the ways, and I'm talking very comprehensively, which is maybe not addressing your particular question on how can we solve this aspect of it in Philadelphia, but I do believe broadly that one of the ways that we can comprehensively address the unhoused and or people who are living in substandard housing is by creating more housing. We don't have enough supply, and it's driving up, and this is true pretty much everywhere, it's driving up the cost of housing pretty much everywhere, and the weakest among us, the most vulnerable among us fall out, and they're most susceptible to this. And I think it's important that we don't forget that. And I personally believe that one of the ways we can solve this is by creating a lot of different kinds of, we need supportive housing, right, for people who are in situations that they need not just a roof, but they also need some guidance and some counseling and, you know, maybe some treatment, and they need a pathway for them. And I think this is a big cultural and societal problem that we face across the country.
That's a great point, and I'm so thankful that you brought up the issue of supply. We had, just another shameless plug here, we do a podcast with former Mayor Nutter, former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, called How to Really Run a City, and we had Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass on, and a lot of it also has to do with political will, and she's exhibiting and cajoling the political will to make a difference in LA. One last question right here. Let's get another dude.
Thanks, Larry. John Moore, I'm with Impact PHL. We're focused on helping the Philadelphia region align their assets with their values. You talked a little bit, well, and I'll say in the public markets, in the investing world, we know that gender diversity actually results in better outcomes, better financial performance for companies that have women in the C-suite or fund managers that have women investors included in the fund and the management team. So you talked a little bit about what gender diversity in your space brings, like relationship management and connections and some of the other things that you said. Actually, you know, maybe women sometimes do better than men in this space. And I'm curious if you can talk about a little bit more about that. What does gender diversity add to this space? And then also, what are the obstacles for recognizing the value of that gender diversity in the construction space, and you know, what could we do to overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and you know, a good point that you raise. And you know, in terms of who I work with, and both workforce individuals, you know, in the field trying to get into careers or in careers in construction, as well as female, you know, business owners per se, and even individuals on my team, where I have women, men. I mean, I think, you know, there's some generalizations that we kind of bring to the table, right, when we talk about, oh, women do this and so on. But I think overall it's really just the different perspectives that we bring, the different approaches, the different ideas and the way that we think, and having, you know, diversity in general. I know when we were talking before this panel, Melissa brought up cognitive diversity, which I think is important, right? It's not just about gender, it's about the backgrounds and the experiences that people bring to the table and how they approach their job differently and what they can contribute. And I think in terms of what are the challenges and obstacles to overcome, I'll tell you that one of the biggest challenges and obstacles for women to get into a construction trades career who are mothers is childcare. The hours of a construction worker do not align with a typical child care center hours. And that is a tough problem to solve. You know, and we were just talking about that today, and how do we tackle issues like that? And then there comes down to, you know, in terms of what I would tell, I'll say this, the industry is not for everybody, right? It's not for every woman. It's not, everybody's not cut out for it. And the matter of fact and the truth is, like, the industry is not gonna change overnight to accommodate women. We need to be able to have thick skin and find ways to, you know, push kind of for those changes and those accommodations. Even restrooms, right? And kind of job site etiquette are challenges. And we need to work to change kind of mindset and approaches overall for everybody, and how we approach other individuals who may be different and not just women in general, and kind of educate and pass that down from the top down. is really what, at the end of the day, I think needs to happen.
Anyone else on the panel answer that question? I think that was amazing. I do want to take my moderator hat off for 1 second to say that I think when you really get down to the crux of it, women in our cities have been second-class citizens for so long in society in many different ways. To your point, what this really is about doing things differently, because the way it's been done so far is clearly not working. It doesn't work for everybody, and this is the start. This is the way to flip the script. This is the way to interject new ideas, to bring care to the conversation, and to make cities that really do actually work for everyone. So that's how we do it.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
What a great, uplifting, optimistic discussion. I write all the time about sort of pointing out the problems and hopefully solutions of government. And I think we stumbled upon it. You five should just be the government, and then we get shit done. I want to thank this audience for coming out on a hot day for such an inspiring conversation, especially this panel. Let's hear it for them, and we'll see you next time.